These are 15 craziest religious conspiracy stories on JRE. Episode number 1407. Joe Rogan and Michael Malice explore the psychedelic roots of religion, from burning bushes of DMT to mushroom visions that shaped faith.
Have you tried the new ones like Moxie and TX6 or something?
What, new weed?
No, there's new types of like psychedelics.
Oh, I don't.
You're over that shit?
I don't need that. The stuff that's real is good enough. These people want to try something other than mushrooms? Like, what are you looking for? Acid's not strong enough for you?
I don't think it. There's one that you could turn off.
Oh, you turn it off?
Yeah.
Like with a switch? Like an
Like
app?
no, like you know, like if you're drunk, you can kind of make yourself sober if you need to. So this is a psychedelic that you can switch off.
Oh,
What's
really?
it called? Is it Moxie?
This
Hold
is
on.
Moxie. It's 5-MeO.
Yeah.
MIPT.
What is it called? Hold on.
So,
There's Moxie
hallucinogenic-
and then 2CB is the other one.
I've heard of 2CB from
Yeah.
the Kanye song.
Oh, is that from the Kanye song?
An
Okay.
analog of the more popular drug 5-MeO-DIPT. Foxymethoxy.
Isn't that great? It's got an old-timey name. I've never done it.
Interesting. Foxymethoxy is a great name.
So it's like, I guess, hipster mushrooms. You probably haven't heard of it.
Well, they're always coming up with new things to avoid certain drug tests where they just alter a chemical
Right.
just slightly. And it doesn't fit. That's where 5-MeO DMT was not classified as one of the banned psychedelics in the 1970 Sweeping Psychedelic Act. And dimethyltryptamine was labeled. 5-MeO is DMT with an oxygen molecule attached to it, which eliminates some. I don't know exactly how it works, but the visuals are very different. It looks very different. It feels very different. It's way more potent, and it was legal forever. Like you could order it in the year 2000s. We would get it from a fucking chemical company where you'd order it over the internet, and they would send you like an aspirin bottle of the shit, and you could literally put the entire city on the moon with that that little aspirin bottle.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
It was so potent, and it's this white pure powder that is like straight from this laboratory.
Yeah, pharmaceutical grade.
Pharmaceutical grade,
Yeah.
not for human consumption. 5-methoxy dimethyltryptamine. And we took it, and it just puts you in the center of the fucking universe. You feel like you're a part of every cell and every atom and every neutron, everything. You're part of everything. You're in the soup of it all. There's no detachment between you and things.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything just, whoa. You disappear for like 15 minutes. You're sure you're dead. You're absolutely 100% sure you're dead. And it probably is what happens when you die. And then you come out of it, you're like, what in the fuck? Like, I just got that from a company? I just ordered that with a Visa card? Like, it's crazy. This is pre-PayPal. This was you'd be able to just buy this stuff. Like there was a host of these different things. Like, do you remember salvia?
Oh, I was just talking about that today. Is that still legal or not?
I don't know. It's a good question because it's kind of fallen out of favor. It's not something that people talk about a lot. But when people found out that you could just get salvia from a head shop,
Yeah.
like head shops are supposed to be, you can buy bongs, you can buy velvet posters, but there's nothing there that can get you fucked up. But then they started selling salvia because it was somehow or another legal. And it is one of the most mind-blowing psychedelics known to man.
For 10 minutes, yeah.
Salvia. 10 minutes that feel like 3 months in another life.
It's fucking unbelievably powerful. Ari Shaffir did some on a podcast, and he lived an alternative life for 3 months. He had a family, he had jobs, he had friends, and then all of a sudden, zoop, he came back to reality. And he was like, what
I
the
love this.
fuck?
In an alternate reality, Ari
Yes.
Shaffir has friends.
He has his friends in real life. I'm one of his friends. But he had different friends that I didn't even know. He just went into this place and lived another life. I think he was under the ocean, too. Yeah, there he is right there.
Oh, wow.
So he's gone. And he was getting, and Red Band, of course, filmed it. And so he got very violent when he woke up, too.
Oh, like violent?
Yeah, like, get the fuck away from me. Everybody was fucking with him.
Because it's disorienting.
Yeah, he's confused.
Because you're physically paralyzed.
Yeah. So he's like, get off me. Sam Tripoli's got his sunglasses on. It was chaos. Anyway, he came out of it, and he said that while he was out for 10 minutes, he lived like 3 months in a different world.
Jesus Christ. And then you have to wonder if that's the real one and this is the fake one.
Ah!
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. That's what apparently when you would have the Catholic priest going down the aisle, waving, that would either be sage, which is, I think,
Cleansing.
a derivative of Salvia divinorum. I think not a derivative. A cousin, maybe a close relative. I think sage and Salvia divinorum are extremely close.
Okay.
In terms of like the genus. Genus?
Genus, yeah.
Genus.
What's the genus for sage?
I think it's real close. I think it's one of those things where they think that maybe people were burning that, but they were probably also most definitely burning cannabis. And so they were wafting through the aisles with cannabis smoke, getting everybody secondhand high.
Huh.
Yeah, and that's
It's gonna have that experience. Yeah.
to take them into this fucking Catholic journey. You know, the guy's wearing a robe, just fucking these stained glass windows everywhere. Like, holy shit! And look at the epic structure.
Yeah.
Like, you're looking at these gigantic, beautiful artworks that they're calling buildings.
Sage or salvia?
Okay, all sages are salvia.
Wow.
Over time, though, the term sage has been closely aligned with cooking or medicinal use, and the term salvia has been given to more ornamental members of the genus. Yeah. Nevertheless, salvia is the Latin name or genus given to all these plants. Yeah, so sage is salvia. So salvia divinorum, this incredibly potent psychedelic, is common sage.
Wow. Or close enough, or basic for all intents and purposes. Yeah.
Yeah, in the neighborhood of it.
And it's like a mix of acid and weed.
Yeah,
for
look
10
at those
minutes.
guys tripping balls, son. Those guys are walking around with salvia, blowing salvia smoke. That's not a coincidence, man. They could have picked fucking cedar bark. Like, they chose
Keep the
to
moths
take
away.
some super potent psychedelic and waft it through the air as they're walking back and forth.
Well, there's also that theory that the Salem witch trials are because they're all eating ergot.
Yes, from the
And they're all-
bread,
and
from
they're
the
all
late
tripping.
frost,
Yeah.
or early frost. Yeah, that apparently is a really good one. Like, they really think that really could have been it. Like,
Well, there's a book called The Oracle about the Oracle at Delphi, right? And she had these visions and she would prophesy the future. And they went there and they found her stool. She was sitting
her
over
poo or her stool that she sat on?
it's got 3 legs to it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I thought like an animal. You know?
What's it
Stool
called?
sample?
Copro. What's the thing for dinosaur poo? Fossilized copro something.
Oh.
You can get those.
Buy dinosaur poo?
Yeah, fossilized. Yeah. So they found she was sitting over a crack
Whoa.
with natural gas coming out.
The Oracle of Delphi, high on natural gas visions.
So she's getting high off of whatever that is.
Oh, no shit. So there was natural gas leaking out through the ground where she was partying.
Yeah. So of course she's going to be speaking gibberish and having all these visions because she's getting. It's not like when you inhale the
Yeah. And laughing gas. When you go to the
huffing. Yeah.
Oh.
Nitrous.
Oh, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a lot of these cases.
Of course.
Wacky things that people did. I mean, it only makes sense. I mean, they never did figure out what soma is in the ancient Hindu.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, they think it might have been some kind of psychedelic, but they don't know what. Like, there's all this different speculation. Like, some people think it was a combinatory, that it was like psilocybin mixed with something else, and lotus flower. There's all these like different theories, but nobody really knows. But soma was obviously something that they were taking as a sacrament that would have these profound effects. That's most likely the root of all of these crazy religious experiences. These people were tripping their fucking balls off, and they weren't lying. Like, God did come to them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, God did come to them out of the burning bush and spoke to them. And that's the other thing, the burning bush. They think that, these scholars in Jerusalem think that the burning bush is probably the acacia bush, which is rich in DMT.
Oh.
So that's probably why this is the metaphor, right? The burning bush, and God spoke to them in the burning bush. That's probably what it really means. They were tripping, but they were smoking it, tripping balls, and they met God, and he came back with, this is the only way we're going to get along. We've got to stop raping each other.
And the other thing is a lot of these old mystery religions, right? You have to be initiated into them.
Yes.
And if you're going to join this cult or whatever, for lack of a better term, and they give you, here, take this, you are going to experience something not only that that you've ever heard of,
right,
but like you don't even know how to handle it.
Yes.
And it will change your life permanently. But there's no vocabulary for it there. It's not like now where you know what acid is. You're like, holy shit, this is religious.
Right. You would think it's God.
Yes.
You met God. Yeah.
Unless it's bad, and then you meet the devil.
You know about that guy, John Marco Allegro? Do you know who he is?
No.
He's the guy who deciphered the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, okay.
He worked on the panel for 14 years, and he wrote a seriously controversial book. He was an ordained minister, but he was the only one on the Dead Sea Scroll translation group that they put together that was agnostic. Because he started studying, well, he was an ordained minister, but then he started studying theology, and he was like, this is all fucking crazy. Like, what is this? So he became agnostic, and he wanted to look at the etymology of the words.
Okay.
And so it was his conclusion after 14 years that the entire Christian religion was a gigantic misunderstanding. And what it really was about was psychedelic mushroom experiences and fertility rituals.
Okay.
And he broke down the word Jesus to an ancient Sumerian word that means a mushroom covered in God's semen.
One theory, Jesus was a psychedelic mushroom symbol.
And the idea was that the rain, which would make everything grow, was God's cum. And that it wasn't a bad thing. Like, they didn't think of cum as bad. They wanted to live. Everybody wanted to have children. They wanted to prosper.
Yeah.
And that when the rain would come, mushrooms would appear almost instantaneously. Like, have you ever seen how mushrooms appear after
it's overnight? Yeah, it's seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, and when they would eat those, they would trip their fucking balls off. So they had decided that this was Jesus, and that this was what,
because God's son.
Yes.
Right? God created this from his own seed.
This is what Marco Allegro's his research was pointing to. He was trying to say that what was really going on was these people were trying to hide a lot of what the psychedelic rituals are from the Romans and from the people that captured them. So they hid them in stories and parables, and then there was all sorts of problems in the translations. There's just like, you're taking things from ancient Hebrew and you're breaking it down to Latin and you're breaking it down to German and English. And
I can't believe he got a positive reception for this. If you're taking
didn't necessarily. The book got bought out by the Catholic Church and then recently reinstated. And then
what do you mean bought out?
They bought it. I think they took it off the market. I think you used to be able to only get a copy of it. You used to only be able to get a used copy of it. And then Jan Irvin put it out. He republished it like I want to say maybe 8-10 years ago. So now you can get a hold. But he also published another book after they took that one back. Well, I think I don't know the total history of it, but he published a second book, and the second book was the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Christian Myth, and the first one was the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross.
Wow!
But it only makes sense if you think about people who lived back then. And we know that psychedelic mushrooms aren't recent; they existed forever, right? So if these people found them, and they most certainly did, there's a lot of depictions of them, and there's also a lot of iconography and a lot of you see shapes that resemble mushrooms.
Ancient paintings filled with mushroom symbols.
It's like all over the place in some of the ancient artwork, and even people that are dancing naked under the influence of a mushroom. So there's a translucent mushroom shape that surrounds them in these ancient paintings and these religious paintings. These people are dancing. So most likely they were tripping balls. Well, if you didn't know any better, of course you would think that's God talking to you. If you didn't know what psilocybin is, you didn't know what dimethyltryptamine is, you didn't know what any of these things are.
Well, you're also going to hear literal voices.
Yes, literal voices.
So it's not even that it's not a metaphor. You're going to hear a voice talking to you.
Right. So people that think that like these people who created religion were all liars, they're probably more likely trippers. Because if you look at all these religious stories, they're all crazy and weird and fantastical and wonderful, but most of them are like guides to live life in a more virtuous or pious or moral way, right? That's what the tenets of a lot of these religions. Well, that's what you get when you trip. When you trip, you got to be a better person.
Yeah, okay,
that's what you get. You get this like profound, humbling, I shouldn't say humiliation, but humbling in the face of this titanic expression and experience that you can't even describe with words. And then after it's over, you want to be a better person.
And there's also a sense of comfort that it's going to be okay.
Yes, it's going to be okay.
Which is what religion traditionally gives a lot of people, like the sense of reassurance that someone's looking out. You're not going to accidentally, go.
It's not even that. You get a feeling that even if it's not okay, it's okay.
Right. Yes.
Like when you die, it's okay. When you trip balls, like one of the things that Larry Hagman say. Remember Larry Hagman from Dallas?
That
guy?
I will say Dallas is probably the greatest show of all time.
Great fucking show.
That is, and people confuse it with Dynasty, which was trashy.
Garbage.
Dallas was one of
it's a great show.
I think it's literally the best show of all time, in my opinion.
Was his name J.R.? What was his last name? Ewing. That's right. Well, he tripped balls and talked about it on CNN.
Actor Larry Hagman, psychedelics erased his fear of death.
And said that it was one of the best experiences of his life because he no longer was afraid of death. Before that, he was afraid of death. And the one thing that tripping hard apparently, really did for him is that he no longer held that fear.
And he had stared death in the face because of his alcoholism. He had to have a liver transplant or whatever it was. So it was no joke.
Yeah.
He was a huge alcoholic.
Episode 2047. Joe Rogan and Brian Murarescu explore the psychedelic roots of early Christianity. from tomb rituals to Vatican frescoes.
And the more you study the ancient past, whether it's in ancient Greece or a lot of my book focuses on Paleo-Christianity, the more you see this kind of ritual. So can I show you some images of Paleo-Christian ritual?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Let's do it. I love it. I love talking to you.
Okay, cool.
What do you got?
Jamie, there should be a folder called Circe,
Cersei, like the lady from Game of Thrones?
like the lady from Game of Thrones, yeah. And
She's my favorite.
so then you'll get to know her a lot better.
Such a
here.
great character.
You'll get to know her a lot better.
Shame. Shame.
What am I looking for here? on this folder?
It's in my my Google Drive.
Oh no, yeah, I have the folder. What do you want me to pull up? 'Cause
Oh,
the
just
first
ju-
few pictures are just
Just from
words.
just from the first one. Yeah, we can start with we can go into the pictures.
my point. It's just words though. It's
That's fine.
Okay.
We can move forward from there. So,
Okay.
what I'm going to show you are some images from a hypogeum. And I don't think we got around to this last time, but a hypogeum was this underground chamber, and it was the site where most of the early Christian ritual took place. So if you think back to Paleo-Christianity, between the death of Christ and Constantine, which is 300 years later, give or take, Christianity was this illegal cult. It was this underground religion, in some cases literally. So the only places where you would celebrate the Eucharist and the proto-mass were in like small in private homes and this agape meal. And then sometimes you'd go underground into these like necropolis, like these places of the dead. And that, for some reason, was the place where the Mass was celebrated. And so as part of my research for the book, I went into some of these underground chambers to see what the earliest Christians would have seen and some of the evidence that was left behind in terms of like frescoes. So there's no botanical, chemical analysis of what was happening in these places, but we do have images, we have frescoes, and we have the idea of what the early ritual would have looked like. And a couple weeks ago, I reached out to the Vatican specifically to ask them if I could show these images to you today. And they said yes.
All right. Thank you, Vatican.
They're actually
Take back all the shit I said about you.
they're great research partners. It's the Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology. So it's the archaeological team that is responsible for the preservation and conservation of all these ancient sites. And I think it's an aspect of early Christianity that like very few people know about. And so what was happening underground, if you want to go back to the first slide just quickly, there was this Yale professor who sadly died in recent years. It was Ramsay McMullen. And what he talks about are these underground chill-outs. They were called vigilia. The Latin word for them is refrigerium, where we get the word refrigerator. So they were like underground chill-outs where certainly the Romans, and it's believed the earliest Christians, would have gone to celebrate the dead with sacramental wine, with celebratory wine. They would have a wine ceremony in these dank chambers underground to like usher the dead into the afterlife or bring them refreshment. They were called refrigeria. And so it's kind of unclear when the refrigeria, a pagan Roman ceremony, became like a proto-Eucharistic Christian Mass. Like the line is very blurred at this period of time.
Where did pagan wine rituals end and Christian Mass begin?
Which I call the pagan continuity hypothesis. This notion that the older wine drinking consumption by the Romans, the Greeks before them, somehow influenced, at least in some cases, the earliest celebrations of the Mass. And so I just showed this quickly to show that in these wine parties, Ramsay has this great line saying that this was not just picnicking at the bottom there. He said this was religion. So even though it looks like a picnic, it looks like they were gathering over almost like a Mexican Day of the Dead ceremony. Like they would meet by the graveyard to remember the dead and the ancestors. Yeah, there was wine and food, but this was religion to the ancient Romans. And I think to the Romanized Christians who followed them in the first century, second century, third century. So the next slide is that's just a bunch more text from a Catholic encyclopedia, by the way, from 1907, if I'm not mistaken. And it talks about how the celebration of the dead and this funeral banquet you see right in the middle there, this notion that the funeral banquet is really kind of at the core of what the early Mass was. Even if you go back to the Gospels, it was Jesus asking for the commemoration of this event. Do this in memory of me. As you do this in memory of me, remember my life, death, and eventual resurrection. This is sort of the prototype for the Mass. And so it's important to remember that the funeral banquet was there to bind those together who remained faithful to the memory of Jesus after his death. It's very similar to this Roman refrigerium. So I give all that as background just to show you the first couple images from the hypogeum. So if you skip to the next one, that's what it looks like when you go underground. It was discovered in 1919, I think, as a Fiat shop around the corner was trying to expand into a sunken garage. They came across these monuments.
Wow.
Which is not uncommon in Greece and Italy and around the Mediterranean. So they found this hypogeum, which dates to the 3rd century AD. So we don't have firm dates. It could be anywhere from like 220 to 250 AD. So this is the time period we're talking about. So these were tombs. They're rock-cut tombs in the hypogeum here. If you go to the next one, one of the first things I saw when I went into the hypogeum was this, which, it's a little strange because, again, you're trying to figure out if this is a Roman pagan refrigerium or if this is a Christian celebration of some sort of Eucharist. Because, again, this site is controlled by the Vatican. The Vatican has preserved this for reasons. And it's been said by the Pontifical Commission that these are some of the most explicit and concrete evidence for the origins of Christianity. So this is, whether this is purely pagan or Christian is sort of a moment of debate. But, if you just look at it, what's odd is that you see 12 people gathered around a table. And when you think of 12 people gathered around a table...
Is this the earliest hidden image of the Last Supper?
You think of something like the Last Supper.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's pretty clear that what's important to this dinner is the chalice that's being lifted by the servant there. Or maybe it's a priest of some sort. So it's clear that whatever's happening, wine is important to this gathering of 12 people. The interesting part is the woman who's appearing in the back. If you look closely... there's sort of like this effigy of a woman descending exactly from the background to the foreground. It's thought that she is Aurelia Prima, and Aurelia was one of the dead women to whom the hypogeum was dedicated. And so what they think is that's her. This is one of the Vatican's interpretations, is that that's her emerging from the world of the dead to take place in this funeral banquet, in this ceremony.
Mm.
So we're not really sure.
How do they interpret that?
Because she's not seated at the table, and because what they think this is that whenever, especially because of the place that we're in, which is underground, that when wine is being served at a refrigerium, that the Romans would habitually do this in order to commune with the dead, not as a picnic, but as religion, as Ramsay MacMullen says. So this was their religion for keeping alive that relationship to the dead and refreshing the dead in the afterlife. And when you went there to celebrate them, they would appear. And Ramsay has this great line in his scholarship where he says, the dead themselves participated, which is one of my favorite lines in his research. The dead themselves participated. Whoa. So that's Aurelia participating in a funeral banquet that's happening underground. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So again, unclear if that's Christian or pagan. And then you see some of these images. That's interpreted as Jesus as the Good Shepherd from the Gospel of John. You see the goats down below. So that's either interpreted as St. Paul or Plotinus. Plotinus was this Neoplatonic philosopher who lived around that time in the 3rd century. And so it's unclear if that's St. Paul or Plotinus, or maybe it's Paul using the image of Plotinus to call up the imagery. And again, everything's very ambiguous because Christianity is illegal. So you don't go down there and paint very explicit images of Jesus or the Last Supper or Christian elements, because you could get in trouble for that, obviously. So there's a lot of ambiguity in these frescoes. So if you move past that, this is the most important one, which is kind of mind-boggling. So this is just to the right of that banquet scene, and it's called the Homeric fresco. And it's called the Homeric fresco because it seems to portray a very famous scene from Homer's Odyssey. And it's when Odysseus is stuck on the island with Circe, the witch Circe, the prototypical witch of antiquity, Circe.
A pagan witch's psychedelic brew appears in a Christian tomb.
He's stuck on the island with her, and the three dudes you see there on the bottom to the left have just been transformed from pigs back into men. It's one of the most famous scenes in Book 10 of the Odyssey, where Circe delivers a potion. She concocts a potion, and in Greek it says that the verb that they use for concoct the potion is kukio, just like the ancient potion at Eleusis. This is one of the mythical precedents for what would become the actual kukion that was used in the Eleusinian Mysteries. And so she uses this mythical kukion in which she casts these drugs. It says that she puts drugs into this potion to transform the men into pigs, then back to men. And so it's a very, of all the 27,000 and change lines of the Odyssey and the Iliad, it's a particularly strange image to evoke from Homer, because Circe, amongst all the many things she's famous for, is for being a witch and for having this profound knowledge of the botanical world and potions and things that we might call psychedelics today. And so it's a really strange image to have there. And so the Vatican produced this monograph over a decade ago, where one of their scholars, Alexia Latini, goes over this in great detail to demonstrate why exactly this is Circe. And up above, that's another image of Circe with all her animals on this magical island. And what they found there exactly was cinnabar. And during the conservation process, they were able to identify the mercury sulfide that had been used to paint this red image of cinnabar around the house, which is a very telling detail, because there's a line just before this in the Odyssey where it talks about the fiery smoke coming out of Circe's palace. So between the fiery smoke and the cinnabar and the web down below, there's a lot of certainty that this is probably Circe. If you go to the next slide.
Can I ask you?
Yeah.
What are those people laying down? If you zoom in on Circe?
Right here.
Yeah.
Up above?
What are those people laying down?
Yeah,
What's that supposed to represent?
That's the interpretation from the monograph is that that's some sort of funeral bier. So
so those are dead people.
that could be dead people. Yeah. Which is also strange.
What's that? Satan. Looks like Satan.
That we can't make out. So the loom was another telltale sign. So there's the fiery smoke at the palace, and the loom is another telltale sign. So this is, if it were just this, you would think, okay, maybe it's just Circe and a loom. But if you go to the next slide, and the next one, there's a manuscript at the in the Pope's library called the Vergilius Vaticanus. And you can find this online. And in the Vergilius Vaticanus manuscript, which is from about 400 to 430 AD,
Even the Vatican's manuscripts preserve the image of a witch.
there's this picture of Circe and the loom, which corresponds to Circe and the loom on the right. So they know for sure, with relative certainty at least, that there's some image continuity between Circe and the loom. And she's talked about in the ancient literature as always being at the loom. So the confidence is rising.
And for folks who don't know what a loom is, it's how you create cloth with threads. Some people,
yeah, that's true.
So with this, for you're just listening to this, what she has is like, if you've ever seen people make cloth in a traditional way with a loom, she's got why did they depict her with a loom? Why was she known as a person who makes cloth?
Because that's what Homer said. That's what Homer says in his epic poetry. And that's what Virgil also says in his epic poetry. So Homer writes the Odyssey. Centuries later, Virgil writes the Aeneid. That's sort of the mythical founding of Rome, the main character Aeneas. And in both versions, there's a Circe character. So this Circe character survives for centuries in the ancient world, from the Greek to the Latin. And in both cases, the loom is mentioned. And also, what's mentioned in these passages are the fact that Circe uses potent herbs. In the Latin, it says potentibus herbis. So she's using potent herbs and mixing up potions to transform these men into pigs, and vice versa. So, it's a very strange idea to have a pagan witch in a fresco that's been preserved in this Paleo-Christian monument. Combined with this refrigerium, sort of Eucharistic celebration of the dead. And then in the last few images, what it depicts is a woman being initiated into these high mysteries. So things you don't normally associate with early Christianity.
Episode number 2252. Joe Rogan questions Wesley Huff on the shocker 2386 with Joe Rogan unravels with red clay strays the secrets of giants, hidden relics, and the mysterious. Episode number 2385. Are biblical miracles echoes of another realm? Joe Rogan and Rick Strassman explore the possibility that faith and DMT visions share the same dimension. A shocking twist. Lot's story takes a darker turn than most remember. 1985. Joe Rogan and Paul Stamets dive into the hidden link between psychedelic mushrooms, ancient religions, and modern psychotherapy.
And that is the mushroom that was documented in The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, where John Marco Allegro alleged that the entire Christian religion was essentially a misunderstanding. And it was really all about the consumption of these psychedelic mushrooms and fertility rituals. And that these were all sort of captured in stories and tales and parables. And
it was academic suicide for him to come out with that statement, and still very controversial.
Have you read his work?
Yes, I have.
What do you think?
Well, linguistically, the guy's way over my head. If you read his book, it's all about linguistics, and one of the translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Way beyond my ken of knowledge. It's so far beyond my ken of knowledge, I can't make rhyme or reason out of it.
That seems to be the problem with it. Most people can't.
Yeah. So, and there's threads of truth in all of this, but I don't buy it, on its face, on the grandiose conclusions that he made. But clearly, mushrooms have inspired religion.
Yes.
And I teach these workshops on gourmet and medicinal mushrooms, and one of these workshops, this very spiritual guy, he's very quiet, but very definitely, it looked like the real deal. He waited until everyone was gone. And he said, "Paul, I've been sent here." And I said, "Really?" And he says, I'm a devout Christian. I'm in Billy Graham's inner circle. And a bunch of us take psilocybin mushrooms as sacraments.
Jesus
and it's brought us
Christ.
It's brought us closer to Jesus, closer to our religion. Now, I don't care if you're Muslim or Christian or Hindu. The idea of these mushrooms making you feel the spiritual universe, more spiritually connected, given your cultural heritage and your reference points. But he said these are extremely important. Now, my mother was a charismatic Christian. I met some people in her group who came to their religious beliefs through psychedelics. Don't do psychedelics now, but that was their portal. They had their big revelation through psychedelics. So the connection between psilocybin and magic mushrooms and religion, I think has a lot of credibility, and there's lots of great examples of that. The specificity of some of the arguments people make, I have great doubts about.
That's interesting. What about in the ancient Hindu religions? The ancient Hinduism and some of the ancient books speak of various sacraments that have sort of never been defined, right?
Yeah, and why is the Brahmin cows sacred? When the psilocybe cubensis grows out of cow poop in India, and yet they won't eat cows. And Buddha supposedly died from a mushroom. He was given a mushroom by a peasant. And
could the mushroom be the hidden thread linking Buddha and Christ?
And ingested the mushroom and died. And so there is that connection. I've always thought it curious that psilocybe cubensis is such a religious provoking mushroom, and yet cows are highly revered as being sacred. Well, I would think you would keep the mother of the mushroom sacred.
Yes,
you want to protect the resource. But again, these are at times when fables and parables and religious rites were controlled by the cognoscente, and they were the gatekeepers of knowledge that was too powerful for the general population to understand or appreciate, and so they protected that knowledge. Right. And that's the rule of most religions, is that the inner circle, holds the keys to the kingdom. And what's happened with Orthodox religions is they create institutions where you have to pay tithings in order to have a gatekeeper to have a contact with God. And that, I think, is the problem with monotheism versus polytheism.
Jack Herer, before he died, was working on a book about psychedelic drugs, specifically mushrooms, and religious experiences. And he had some really crazy old paintings that he had found that showed people that were naked, seemingly dancing in ecstasy with a translucent mushroom around them. And the idea being that this is supposed to, this image was supposed to represent someone who was tripping.
There's a lot of really interesting books that have been published that show art, going back hundreds of years, even into the late 1300s, showing Christian art where mushrooms are pretty easily seen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of history to that, but it becomes the unfathomable. I mean, maybe you can imagine it to be true, but how can you prove it to be true?
Right. How can you?
Yeah. So a lot of that is it's great historical information. Probably a lot of it's true. Hard to say which is true and which is not.
But it seems reasonable, right?
Yeah, but in modern times now, Johns Hopkins, the clinical studies are on mysticism, spirituality, showing that these are some of the most spiritually significant experiences of people's lives. The interesting thing about the Johns Hopkins studies is that 70% of the people had positive experiences, and 14 months later, they still describe those experiences as being significantly positive. Their friends, their colleagues, their fellow workers also say that it materially changed these people's personality. But the 30% of the people who had negative experiences, the negativity of the experience did not extend more than the experience itself. So this speaks to remembering. And what's been determined is when you have these really profound spiritual experiences, it sits with you. And when you remember it, you rekindle that thought. And this may be a way of overlaying PTSD. Rather than having the reference standard that's associated with PTSD, you supplant it with a positive experience. But the people who had negative experiences during tripping did not have that negative consequences did not extend more than the experience itself. So this was a profound insight. And so John Hopkins, Roland Griffiths just emailed me recently. They have other clinical studies that are ongoing, looking at one which just got published on meditators given placebos versus getting high doses of psilocybin, and then measuring the consequences of those experiences months or a year or two later. And again, the same thing is reinforced. These psilocybin mushroom experiences create a positive reference point that you can capitalize on by remembering them subsequent from this experience by not even having to take the mushrooms again. That is profound. When you have a happy memory that you can anchor your personality on, it's a game changer.
Yeah. I just I wonder if we're ever going to see in our lifetime centers where you can go and a trained professional can guide you through something like this.
It's happening now.
Is it? Yes.
The California Institute of Integrative Studies, and based in San Francisco, is training therapists. In Canada, there are therapists. In Europe, there are therapists. There's training programs now in psychedelic therapy. This is something that it has a tremendous momentum. Indigenous peoples have a really nice structure. Many of them do, not all, but many have a really good structure for the responsible use of these substances. Us that are displaced peoples, and I would call us European-based people and many other people displaced, we don't have the same constructs historically that we can operate within. And so the psychedelic therapist movement is huge right now. Canada is leading the way. The Canadian government is very, very positive towards psychedelic therapy.
When nations embrace psychedelics, it's not counterculture, it's survival.
Because the opioid crisis and because significant results. There's another movie this has come out called Dosed, and it tracks a heroin addict, a young lady in Vancouver. It is a heroic movie. It is not one of these, you kind of feel good at the end of the movie, but it is intense. And she's doing iboga, and she also does high doses of mushrooms. But the opioid crisis is so pervasive, there's so poor treatments available that through these psychedelic therapies in several days, they're seeing a tremendous success and people breaking decades-long opioid addiction within a week. And so the psychedelic therapists are integral to that success. And so there are clinics now arising all over the world for this, in Portugal and Mexico and Spain, in Jamaica, the clinics are arising specifically to meet the needs of people who are trying to get these legally, so they don't get in trouble with the law. So in Portugal and Spain and Jamaica, for instance, these are legal. Many of these substances are.
Episode number 2160, Ancient Tablets, Lost Civilizations, and the DNA of the Gods. Joe Rogan and Billy Carson explore the mysterious origins of humanity.
This is a good...
Episode number 1430, Raghunath Kapo joins Joe Rogan to explore how ancient Indian texts blur the line between myth, spirituality, and extraterrestrial technology.
We do a teacher training, a yoga training in India every January. I just got back from it.
Yeah, I saw it on your Instagram.
It's great. It's super
Yeah.
fun. We have 3 academies. We have a music school where we study Indian music in kirtan. We have a 300-hour training for people who are already teachers, and we have a sacred literature. So you study the Bhagavad Gita and all these sacred texts.
We were talking about that before the podcast. I really wanted to get into that eventually. I just didn't know how to, like, the mystical aspects of the Bhagavad Gita and of the Mahabharata, all the ancient Indian texts, which are filled with really wild, out there shit. You know, I mean,
It's all real. All that
it's all
crazy
real?
stuff is real.
In what way? Like,
Just like all the things that you say, like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. That's fantastic. The more you get into it, you realize that's freaking real, man.
like what? Like what's real?
Everything from like
The Vimanas.
Vimanas, things like that. I can't say are real, but I could understand how things can be made of subtle energy.
Well, explain
So
Vimanas to people.
Vimana is like a spaceship.
Yes.
It's a spaceship from, and they speak of spaceships and flying crafts,
Yeah.
but they're not made of the same elements of this earth.
Right.
So we have all these things about, and I get it. There's a bunch of people making up shit about I saw an alien, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also very qualified people, Air Force colonels and things like that.
I've had them in here.
You've had them in? Yeah, they said,
Yeah.
what kind of, and they suffer from the same thing, these people who claim abduction. It's not like a type of neurosis or schizophrenia. They suffer from like post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yes.
Like something happened, they disappeared, they were found 2 weeks later.
Do you remember the story of Betty and Barney Hill?
No.
It's the most famous abduction story. It was an interracial couple from, I think it was the 1950s or the 1960s. And just randomly.
My interviews always go here.
I had this girl on the podcast, this woman on the podcast yesterday. She's an MMA fighter. Her name is Angela Hill. She's a couple days ago,
A UFO legend's bloodline walks right into Joe's studio.
actually. This badass MMA fighter. And at the end of the podcast, she goes, I forgot to bring this up. My grandfather is Barney Hill. I was like, that guy. I'm like, no fucking way. That guy, Barney Hill, was the very first, like, really public UFO abductee. And there's and he describes his craft that's eerily similar to the crafts that Bob Lazar has described and different people described, and he and his wife lost time while they were driving and then woke up with these bizarre, horrific memories that they both shared of this encounter with these space beings, and that they were abducted and they were medical examinations were run on them, and then they were replaced with missing time. And it's crazy if you listen to the recordings of him being hypnotized and going through it, like screaming in fear that they're touching him and where are they taking him, what are they doing to him. It's not like a guy acting. It's not like a scene in a movie where someone's screaming in fear. It sounds real. And
The teachings of ancient India is that life exists on all planets. It even exists on the sun. And so the first argument would be like, come on, how are we going to exist? They just don't have bodies that are different than yours. They have a fire body. And therefore, I'm trying to look at how does a person with earth and water body live in the sun? They can't.
Right.
You have to have a body. I mean, I used to think like this when I was 13 years old.
Right.
I used to think like, okay, why can my dog hear those sounds, but I can't hear them?
Right.
What am I missing? What sense am I missing that I can't have objective reality?
Yeah.
What am I missing? Am I missing a sense?
Well, I have this principle called the fart theory. Like, if someone farted but you didn't have a nose, you'd have no idea.
You'd have no idea.
You'd have no idea. You'd be like, oh, God, what is that?
That fart theory is the beginning of transcendental thought.
Yeah, because there's a sense that you possess that allows you to
access.
Recognize something that's invisible. You can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't hold it. There's not there you don't there's no way of detecting it other than your olfactory senses. But through your nose, you can detect if something's awful.
What sense am I missing that's keeping me from understanding absolute reality?
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things that you feel when you take psychedelics. Like, is this opening up some new sense that is this around me all the time? I'm just not tuned into it because I don't have the right chemical composition flowing through my brain.
When I start to teach a bigger training, like a yoga training in philosophy, that's one of the things I do mainly.
True learning begins when you accept how little you actually know.
I start with this concept of this is how you understand. Like when I first approached teachers when I went to India, I would say things like, I'm reading this Mahabharata. I think it's a great book, a lot of great lessons here. But come on, we're adults. Am I supposed to understand that a elephant-headed man scribed this entire book? Can't we just extract a useful lesson? And the answer was very good that I got was, and it was very sweet. It wasn't like cruel. He just said, what do you know? It sort of like caught me off guard. Like, what do you actually know?
Right. What do you know?
And he used this example from New York. Okay. Suppose 300 years ago you're living in New York, your family's living in New York, your tribe is living in New York, you have a certain amount of animals and animals that you keep, animals that you ride, animals that you hunt, foods you eat, and then one of you goes on a boat to Africa. And you come back and you think, you're never going to believe what I saw. I saw a striped horse. You're thinking, well, I've seen striped horses. White head, black neck. No. I saw a striped horse. If you've never seen a zebra, it's almost unbelievable if all you know is ponies.
Right.
Or I saw this horse with a really long neck that ate the leaves on the trees. Come on, man. It's all fantastic because we've never seen it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it does. So to really understand the Vedas, the teachings of ancient India, you have to go into it like, not that it's all real. I'm not saying to just blind faith, but I'm not saying don't be a blind doubter. Like it's all unreal. That's bullshit. That's crazy. That's nuts. It's got to be, could be. I don't know, but I don't know a lot.
What do you think what do you think like Ganesh was?
Ganesh's a being.
Episode number 1284. Giant stone heads, mysterious helmets, and a forgotten calendar system. Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock dive into the enigma of the Olmecs.
Do you have anything in this book about the Olmecs?
No, not really. I mentioned them briefly. I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Could you explain that to people that maybe
in Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Again, we don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because that rubber producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. What they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale of up to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features.
Keep that up.
But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native Americans are have a very complex genetic story with very many different elements brought into it, and we shouldn't be necessarily surprised by the supposedly non-Native American look of these Olmec heads.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
Nobody knows because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian pharaoh's crown has ever been found. All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets in these stone reproductions?
They pretty much all wear these helmets in the Olmec stonework. There's another fascinating figure from La Venta, one of the Olmec sites, which is the earliest ever image of a plumed plumed or feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is a famous icon in Central America. Quetzalcoatl, who's the god of peace, the bringer of civilization, who is associated, for example, with the famous pyramid of Kukulkan, which is just another name for Quetzalcoatl at Chichen Itza, where on the spring equinox a shadow effect creates the image of a serpent coiling down the stairway and joining with the carved head of the serpent. There's
A shadow serpent slithers down the pyramid each equinox, a 2,000-year-old optical illusion.
the image from Leventa. That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent in the Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this because I think it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods, sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And it's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer in the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lost.
When I interrupted you to talk about Quetzalcoatl, what were you about to say?
I can't remember.
Oh.
I'm in California. I've been smoking lots of dope, you know.
We were talking about different things in the Amazon. Should we rewind and figure out what we
Yeah,
said?
the serpent god you were talking about.
Before Quetzalcoatl, before that. I have another question. The Olmecs, you were talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans, that they vary widely. But the Olmecs seem to have very similar features, the thick lips, the
Yes, they do.
wide noses. Why do we think that is?
The Olmec's African-looking features may hide a deeper genetic story.
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that the settlement story of the Americas is much more complicated than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that there was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA when DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features, now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to find out what that is. They've always fascinated me. The Olmecs, it's always been such a strange image, the large heads with the helmets on them, and how do they universally look like that? I mean, all
of the features are very, very similar.
Wow.
They're very, very, very similar.
And
quite
always
thick
with the
lips.
helmets.
And almost always. I won't claim that every single Olmec head has a helmet of it, because I think I've seen one that didn't. It's quite a while ago since I explored the Olmec area. But what's fascinating about them is they are supposedly the first high civilization of Central America, that they create structures on a massive scale, that you can see connections between them and the later Maya. That whole mystery of the Mayan calendar was clearly inherited from the Olmecs. It wasn't something the Maya made up. The Olmecs used that same symbolism. So the Mayan calendar is actually an Olmec calendar. And if we then consider the possibility that the Olmecs may just be the latest, the earliest surviving manifestation of that calendar, it could go back much further than that.
Episode number 2242. Joe Rogan and Dr. Rick Strassman dive into the hidden story of Lilith, the giants, and the ancient origins of good and evil.
How do you perceive that force? Is it just energy, or do you anthropomorphize it into like a being that you can recognize and think about?
Right. But there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to like look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place, like you could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right. So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because in the beginning it was they were living in a world of either truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Oh, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got became muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take on Lilith?
Yeah, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, that Adam. No. Was it that after that? I think it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah. But Lilith, plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think Lilith was originally? If it was a thing.
Lilith, the myth that rabbis whispered, not prophets wrote.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's called midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra biblical. Yeah, and I've only looked into extra biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's the source of that stuff?
The imagination, and I think the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things and entertaining things, like, for example, Lilith is the source of the demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
he's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly. It was him. I do not remember, though. But I remember thinking, like, wow. Like, and then the original story. Like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of, or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you...
Well, most of the translations of the Hebrew Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's, very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit, stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or do you think it's pretty clear?
It's, fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
Yeah, but the words and the grammar and the narratives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah, they spent a lot of time working on painstaking, translations. So, there was a responsibility, to do it accurately.
Imagine that story, like trying to pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah. It's a very strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and you visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So you think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place?
No. I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own laws, its own system.
Biblical visions and DMT trips both feel equally real.
Things are regular, like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the narratives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's obscure. So it's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though?
It was as if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness?
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real?
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And, they seem... Well, if you...
Seems like they're blaming everything on Eve, too, which is a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the snake. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And the snake's like, I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk.
Well,
this lady wanted to eat that apple, and she blamed me.
Well, back then, snakes could talk. Or in that world, snakes talk.
How so?
Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak of these things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it's a bit of a paradox. If you...
Let me ask you this.
So if you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve were in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad. Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod, there was Abraham, there was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent.
The Bible reads less like allegory and more like a map of another world.
It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't, dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that. Or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic, wish fulfillment. It's this world that, that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down, and then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place, but you think about it like the version in the scripture. And if you think about it in the version of the scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you
that makes any
consider,
sense.
yeah, kind of, yeah. Well, if you consider, the text to be prophetically received, prophecy is communication between the divine and man, and the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets. Because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received, text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and?
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That to me is one of the weirder origin stories.
Yeah. So what is that origin story? On my recall, it's quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform.
The Anunnaki, gods or ancient astronauts who engineered mankind.
And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit, and it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right, okay.
They have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder, if you love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood and Noah.
The Nephilim, too.
Yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge. They were giants.
Yes, yeah.
Men of renown.
Yeah.
And they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race.
Yeah.
So that story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, that is a story in the text. Before the flood, is the B'nai Elohim, come down to earth. They have intercourse with, the daughters of man, and out of those relationships, comes this race of giants.
That's the most fun one.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting turn of events.
Well, if you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right. That does line up.
Yeah. It lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah. Just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real and understand their origin, what they were like, what they did, why they did it, what the results were.